As your flight simulator keeps growing, the cables slowly turn into a mess you keep ignoring. I did that too until I rebuilt my setup and finally figured out how to clean things up. The ideas I found take the whole situation from overwhelming to something you can actually work through step by step. In this video, I'll show you 8 practical ways to organize the wiring on your sim so you can turn that jumble into something you're proud of. When you first start building a flight simulator, the wiring feels simple. You plug in a few controls, add a monitor, and everything stays manageable. But as the sim grows, the cables grow with it. New flight controls, new avionics, new displays, they all add more wires to connect. And just mounting those components pulls on the cables you already have. Over time, you start avoiding the back of the rig because every small change turns into a hunt through a tangle of wires. Upgrades take longer than they should. You'll think it'll be faster if you just leave everything hanging loose instead of bundling it, but that's rarely true. Troubleshooting gets harder because nothing is obvious at a glance anymore. I've been through that cycle a few times as I've upgraded my setups over the years. This time, I wanted a wiring plan that could grow with the simulator instead of collapsing under it. Something that made it easy to slide the rig around, swap panels, and reroute devices without the wiring bunching up into a giant ball that gets tangled and refuses to move. But before we get into the actual steps, there's something important to understand about what clean really means, at least to me. In professional systems like avionics bays, broadcast racks, and studio control rooms, density is normal. Busyness is normal and completely unavoidable because these systems are compact and full of hardware, just like a serious home sim. The goal isn't to make the wiring disappear or hide every cable behind cosmetic sleeves. The only real way to make the wiring vanish is to enclose everything like a turnkey sim, and that defeats the modularity I was trying to achieve. The goal is discipline, not invisibility. Every wire needs a clear path, proper support, and a way to be serviced months or years from now. When you see a dense layout that's orderly and predictable, that's what I think professional integration looks like. That's the perspective behind the kind of wiring I'm about to show you. The first idea is also the simplest, and honestly, it's the one that gives you the biggest bang for your buck. Label both ends of every cable. If you label everything before you run a single line through the rig, the rest of the process becomes a lot easier. A wiring layout can look clean from the outside, but without labels, you still end up tracing cables by hand whenever you change something. On my builds, every cable gets a short, clear name at both ends. I use self-laminating labels wrapped snugly around the cable with the text in short all-caps words like rudder, audio out, or yoke. They sit flush so nothing flaps around or catches on anything. This becomes incredibly helpful when multiple similar-looking lines follow the same path. When I reorganize the USB side, I know exactly which line goes to the PC and which ones go to each panel. A simple label at each end turns a neat layout into something you can actually maintain. If you do nothing else in this video, this is the one step I recommend doing. Power bricks, hubs, and amplifiers are the anchor points of the whole wiring system, and where you place them affects everything around them. If they sit on the floor or dangle behind the monitor, the wiring tends to follow their chaos. But once you mount these heavier components thoughtfully, the rest of the layout naturally falls into cleaner patterns. On my setup, I keep the power bricks in open air where they stay cool and easy to reach. They attach with 3M style Velcro tape so they're secure, but I can still remove them without tools. The power strips mount vertically to the frame, which keeps them off the floor and makes them easier to manage. And the USB hub bolts directly to the profile using standard T-slot hardware so it doesn't shift even with a bunch of heavy cables plugged in. Placing these structural pieces close to the devices they serve keeps cable lengths shorter, reduces clutter, and makes the entire system more predictable. It also makes the rig easier to service because everything is visible and supported instead of hidden in a corner or buried under a desk. Good mounting choices give the rest of the wiring plan a solid foundation. With the major components locked in, now you can start anchoring the wiring itself. The next idea is to choose one structure where the wiring lives and commit to it. As the simulator grows, the wiring tends to drift away from the hardware and into the room. Cables start attaching to the desk, the wall, the floor, and the chair. That's usually the point where everything starts to fall apart. One of the reasons I built this sim on an aluminum chassis is that it gives me a clear, rigid structure to anchor everything to. But you don't need a full frame to use this idea. Even with a desk mount or a hybrid setup, you can still decide that the panel support or the underside of the desk is the one place where the wiring lives. On my build, every cable, power strip, hub, etc. attaches directly to the frame. The whole rig moves easily as a single unit when I need to slide it for maintenance or rearrange the room. I used plastic cross blocks that fit into the profile channels. They let you firmly anchor cables to the rig. You then pass a zip tie through the slot, secure the wire, and trim the tie flush. They're pretty cool, actually. Everything else lands on those cross blocks so the wiring has a consistent geometry. And if you have multiple large wires that tie back to the room for power or maybe audio like I do, they can be wrapped into a 1-inch diameter umbilical sleeve so everything moves as one. Once everything is anchored to a single structure, the rig starts to feel like a unified system instead of a collection of parts with cables hanging between them. Now that the hardware is mounted and the anchoring points are set, the next thing that improves the look and feel of the wiring is the shape of the runs themselves. A layout becomes much easier to understand and modify when each cable follows a clear, supported path. And straight lines with gentle tension almost always look better than weaving things through every channel you can find. In my build, surface routing ended up looking far cleaner than forcing cables into the T-slot. The slot clips were difficult to snap in and they caused some cables to pop out or form awkward bends. Cross blocks and external anchors gave me much smoother geometry. Each change of direction happens where there's actual support, and each run has just enough tension to stay in place without stressing a connector. This creates long, predictable lines that are easy for your eye to follow and easy to work on when something changes. Short fan-outs around the junction boxes help the layout to stay organized too. A few inches of clean separation between cables makes the system feel deliberate. I use small Velcro ties to group transitions into a sort of fan so they hold their shape without being pulled too tightly. Straight supported runs won't hide every cable, and that isn't the goal. The goal is to make anything visible look intentional, calm, and clearly part of the overall structure. When the visible paths follow this discipline, the entire wiring plan feels more principled and easier to maintain, and nicer to look at. The next idea is to keep different cable types on their own paths. A lot of clutter comes from mixing power, USB, audio, and video into one thick bundle that goes everywhere. Those lines behave differently and they cause fewer problems when they follow separate routes. On my rig, power lines run low along the right side of the frame, close to the bricks and the power strips. USB has its own route that rises up toward the hub, usually in a clean vertical run that branches out to each device. Audio stays completely away from the power and high current lines as much as possible. On my sim, the speaker and transducer cables live on their own side of the frame and cross power only when they have to, and then only at a 90-degree angle. That matters in my setup because my Pro audio gear is very good at picking up noise from power lines and digital lines when they sit next to them. Keeping them on their own path supposedly reduces hum, crackles, and strange interferences that are hard to track down later. But to be honest, this probably is more theoretical than practical. The main reason to separate them is because they generally have different starting points and different kinds of destinations: power outlets, USB hubs, speakers, transducers, and so on. Sensitive video cables get their own treatment as well. The DisplayPort cable is thick and doesn't like sharp bends, so I give it a gentle loop and avoid forcing it into deep channels. Once each cable type has its own lane, the entire layout becomes easier to read. You can look at the rig and immediately tell where the power lives, where USB lives, and where audio and video live. If something goes wrong, you know which path to inspect first. And when you add a new device later, you already know which lane it should join. Do I adhere to this separation rule 100%? No, and I don't think that's possible given the tight confines and limited places to run cable. but I try to at least strive for it when I can. Once you separate the cable types, the next challenge is dealing with the different wire lengths that every simulator collects over time. Slack is unavoidable. Every device ships with a different cable length, and every upgrade adds a little more. But the goal isn't to eliminate slack. The goal is to control it so it never spills into the open areas of the rig. I used Junction boxes designed for simulator builds, and they made a huge difference. These boxes mount directly to the frame. They give each cable a place to store its extra length right next to the device it belongs to. USB slack sits under the hub. Audio slack stays on the right side rail away from power. Power slack collects near the bricks and strips where it naturally wants to live. Inside each box, every cable is coiled loosely and individually. A loose coil settles naturally without binding, and it won't fight against the lid or the cables around it, at least not too much. Because the coils live side by side instead of bundled together, the box stays clean and easy to work with when you need to reorganize something. Keeping the slack controlled this way means the visible wiring stays calm and predictable even as the system grows. And when you swap equipment, the slack is already organized so the changes are quick and clean. Controlling slack is about giving that extra length the proper home, so the rest of the wiring stays tidy and easy to maintain. Even with clean cable runs, the system still needs a little room to breathe as it evolves. If every line is pulled tight and cut to an exact length, the whole layout becomes fragile. Any small change, even something simple like swapping a USB device, forces you to pull things apart that shouldn't need touching. A small service loop at each device solves that before it becomes a problem. A service loop is just a bit of extra cable placed near the endpoint so you can unplug the device easily. I'm not really sure why they call it a loop, but that's the terminology people seem to use. A lot of times you'll have to unplug and replug a device to reset it if it isn't working properly. Without extra slack, this becomes difficult. And different types of cables need different amounts of slack. A DisplayPort cable gets a soft loop because it's sensitive and doesn't like tension. USB cables get a couple inches too, so I can move the hub or adjust a run without dragging half the rig along with it. They're almost invisible in day-to-day use, but they save a lot of time whenever you upgrade something. Service loops aren't about making the wiring look loose. They're about giving yourself a little margin, just enough extra length so the system is easy to work on. And that convenience obviously becomes more valuable every time your simulator evolves. A compact, feature-rich home simulator is never going to look like a sealed commercial trainer, and that's completely okay. The goal of cable management isn't to hide every wire. It's to create a layout that's orderly, maintainable, and easy to work on as the simulator evolves. Some lines will always remain visible. Some areas will always be dense, especially around hubs and avionics panels. That's not a failure. That's just how real hardware works when everything is packed into a small space. In the professional world, avionics bays, broadcast racks, studio control rooms, things get busy up close. What makes them clean isn't invisibility. It's the discipline behind the layout. Everything has a place. Everything is supported. And everything is reachable without tearing the whole system apart. Your simulator is kind of like a living system. It'll change as your training changes and as new hardware arrives. Realistic cleanliness means designing a wiring plan that supports that ongoing evolution instead of fighting it. When you follow the steps that I've shown, all of those choices work together to create a layout that stays clear long after the initial build. These ideas aren't about creating a showroom finish. They're about building a simulator that still feels easy to service and improve years from now. This whole wiring project took time, but I feel the payoff was worth it. I used off-the-shelf parts throughout the build that made everything much easier than trying to create some kind of custom harness or sealed system. I'll put links to the specific components I used in the description. Along the way, I learned a few things that are worth passing on. The first is that even with the best intentions, you can't keep every cable type perfectly isolated. There are places where paths cross or where runs have to mix, and that's just normal in a compact rig. What matters is minimizing those overlaps and being aware of where they are so you can avoid interference or clutter. I also learned that mistakes are survivable. If I routed something poorly or needed to remove a cable later, zip ties made that a little slower, but not too painful. A change that might take 1 minute with loose wiring might take 10 minutes in a structured layout, but I didn't need to make changes very often. It was still far better than stuffing everything into sleeves or rigid channels that are almost impossible to rearrange. And it was certainly easier than trying to untangle a single wire from a confused tangled ball like I used to do. But the biggest lesson I learned is that cable management isn't about perfection. It's about building a wiring plan that respects how your simulator actually evolves and giving yourself the tools to keep it organized without starting over every time. If you found any of this useful, please consider liking the video and subscribing. It helps me out a lot and lets me keep sharing what I learn along the way. Thanks for watching and happy simming.